Your voice, your opinion, your community. Fact TV, free speech, protected.
The following is independently produced programming. The views and opinions expressed are those of the producers and do not reflect the views and opinions of Falls Area Community Television, our staff, or board of directors.
Secrets in the shadows, lost and found. Truth in every echo, loud and clear. Keep on with the long road, no more fear. In the halls of power, whispers grow. Every secret cracked beneath the undertone. Honest stories hidden in the glass. On this long road, in the truth we trust.
Welcome to The Long Road. I'm your host, Chris Roberts. We're going to have two topics today. One will be school choice that the House and the Senate are working on right now. And the other one is a little bit about the future of our planet and what's happening. We spend so much time talking about climate change, global warming. There's a lot more going on than that, but we just like to go at the 10,000 foot level instead of moving down to the ground level. But before we get in there, I'm going to play a little number game. Since basically the budget for 25-26 until September 30th, 2026 has all been approved. The president signed off like a $1.2 trillion spending package. So basically everything except Homeland Security, ICE, has been approved. They said ICE only has about 2 weeks of funding left, but they know how to move money around. Okay, when we go on some of these numbers, this is at the federal level, and what happens at the federal level affects funding at the state level and funding at the city level. For probably about 25 years, both Democrats and Republicans are basically getting states and communities hooked on federal funding. You know, it's kind of to placate. You know, it's kind of like saying, hey, let's do downtown Keene. If we put bike lanes here and we do that, there's a really good chance that we can get federal funding. Or the Middle Keene Middle School. If we make it bigger, we do this, we do that, we can get up to 57% back from the state in building aid. But no one seems to say, do we need them or not, or they just look good. Because if you spend $1 million on something that you don't need, even if the state gives you 57% or $570,000 back, we just spent $430,000 that we really didn't need, and in some cases we didn't have, or we had to go without something. So right now, as of this afternoon, the U.S. debt was almost $38.6 trillion. Basically about $33 trillion more than it was 25 years ago. Right now, at this rate, and approved, the federal government is expected to spend about $7.1 trillion in this fiscal year. Okay, Medicare and Medicaid, $1.9 trillion. Going forward, that's going to be reduced into one big, beautiful bill. That's on the Medicaid side, because the federal government has been giving money to the states to pay Medicaid. So the federal government gives the state of New Hampshire Medicaid money, and the state of New Hampshire then kind of passes it because they have to match. And the state house says, no, we're not going to do that. Okay, then the county government has to pick it up. So last I heard, the county nursing home at Westmoreland is underfunded with fees and Medicare costs by a little bit more than $4 million. So that's $4 million of local county taxpayers that have to be made up. On the Medicare side, people go, hey, I pay into it. Yeah, you paid into Medicare. Yes, for example, Medicare is $202. But if you have one major illness or accident, Medicare will spend more money on that one accident than you ever put in your whole working life. So Medicare is a losing proposition because no one in the state house or the federal government want to increase it. Okay, Social Security, $1.6 trillion. Well, right now in payroll taxes, it's bringing in $1.8 trillion. So it's still on a positive, but as less people work and more people retire, it's only a couple of years before Social Security goes into the negative. It will not have enough money to coming in to pay out. So the money that's in, quote unquote, the Social Security Trust Fund will have to be paid. And what will happen is the federal government will pay it and it'll add into the deficit. Department of Defense. It says $900 billion, but there's a good possibility that it's going to go over the trillion mark this year. Interest, $1 trillion. Federal pensions, $300 billion. Farm and agriculture, food stamps, subsidies, things like that, $250 billion. Income security, unemployment, the Fed share and stuff like that is $700 billion. The VA is $370 billion, which $235 billion is mandatory. So you only have about $150 million to cut if you wanted to do that. So that means just these comes out to $6.32 trillion. And looking at it, federal income tax, 5.7, total of 5.7 income. That's the federal income. And so, which is 1.8 payroll tax, 100 billion on excise tax, could close to 400 billion on tariffs, 310 billion on estate tax, which comes out to 5.7, which means with just those items that I listed and the other ones that are right here, the federal government will start the year off at $520 billion in the hole. And so, and then that's not paying for anything else. So we got a structural deficit that we're not going to be able to afford. They're saying, hey, everything is doing good because the interest rate is coming down, 3.5 to 3.75. But that interest rate has nothing to do with home mortgages. Home mortgages is based on the 10% rate, and the 10% rate has been going up. It's pretty close to 4.3, and it's going higher because of Mr. Trump's relationship with nations, especially Europe and stuff, that don't want to buy our bonds, or if they want to buy our bonds, they want more money. So Mr. Trump wants the Fed to do what they did in 2008 and 2012. Print money to buy U.S. bonds, Treasury bonds. So, and there was another one I was looking at. Since fiscal year 2000 to last fiscal year, we have only spent $17 trillion on the Department of Defense. Just think of it. $17 trillion. And it looks forward that we're going to be spending at least $1 trillion every year going forward. So look at it this way. Medicare, Medicaid, it's going to go up to $2 trillion. Social Security is going to go up to $2 trillion. Department of Defense is going to go up $1 trillion. And interest is going to stay $1 trillion. So just those four is $6 trillion. And right now, the federal government only brings in $5.7 trillion. And so something has to give. And there's only two things. The federal government is going to give a lot less money to states and communities. So we're going to have to realize the candy man like Sammy Davis Jr., the candy man, the drug dealer that wanted to keep us all happy, we got to realize that the candy man is running out of candy, and we're going to have to decide what we're going to have to give up or what we'll be forced to give up. So now, let's go into the first topic. It's not school choice, it's called open enrollment. If the Senate and the House agree on it and the governor passes it, open enrollment means that any child can go to any school in the state of New Hampshire. Yep, any child. And here's one thing, because I lived in California when they did the thing, but of course California pays a heck of a lot of money per student. So like I live in Irvine. Nope, fire engine's going by. I lived in Irvine more than 25 years ago, and for example, the state of California can go, you know what? We're going to give $9,000 per student, no matter where that student lives. So if you live in the Central Valley or whatever, it only costs about $9,000 per student, then you really don't have to worry about property tax or anything. But when I'm living in Irvine, which is a really wealthy community, you've got a bunch of Fortune 500 companies there. You get the University of California in Irvine, pretty selective school. They go, nah, that isn't good enough for us. So in the community, they had like 4 high schools. Okay? And one of the schools, the University High, which was right up the road from the college, they had oceanography. and their teacher was a PhD. They're going there. We want our kids to be doctors and lawyers and engineers and scientists, and we want to make sure our kids got that opportunity. So, hey, we have no problem paying extra property tax for our kids because what we want. That was their choice, and they did it. Like when I moved to, I got transferred from Charleston, South Carolina. When I had a Marine Corps captain, I was one of the wealthiest people there. I go to Irvine. I'm making a little bit more than $50,000 a year. And I go in, and I got 3 children and stuff. And they go, oh, you're below poverty level in our community. And it was kind of really shocking. I was at 50,000 plus with 3 kids, married. I was below the poverty level in that area. So we got to go into, quote unquote, one of those 10% of the houses in every place, the apartment that we got to do, and we paid low rent. But my kids got to go to a real great school, year-round school, great high schools and stuff. And I looked. There's no place in Cheshire County that even came close to the quality of the education my daughters were getting. Okay, you may have a school like Bedford High who goes for baccalaureate education. I might be pronouncing the word wrong, which is a much higher quality education than a basic high school diploma. Okay, that's the type of schools and education my children received. So here it is. If I go in and say, wait a minute, only 21% or 22% of ninth graders are proficient in math, or the reading levels are here, I don't want that for my kids. So I have two kids. They get ready to go to high school. I go over to Bedford High and I go, I would like to enroll my kids in your school. So Bedford High says, okay, Mr. Roberts, your 2 kids can come to my school. Oh, how much is it going to cost me? And the answer is 0. You just have to provide transportation. Okay? So maybe I make a lot of money and my wife doesn't work. Hey, maybe she can do that. Or you know what? Maybe she'll get a job in the Bedford or Manchester area, drive to work in the morning, drop off the kids, and when she gets done, pick up the kids. But then I go, wait a minute. You're saying I don't have to pay? Nope. How much does it cost for a student to go here? Oh, with all our benefits and everything we have to offer, high school, we pay $26,000 a kid. Wow. You're just giving up $52,000? You're not charging us any money? Oh, no. See, the way the law is on open enrollment, you can come to our school and we'll just bill Keene. Okay, the question is, okay, Keene High School, maybe Keene High School pays $18,000 a year for kids. Yes, Bedford High pays, say, $25,000. And so Bedford High gives a bill to Keene for two tuitions. So the way they're working it out, so deal is that Keene will only have to pay the $18,000 each. So Keene would have to write a check to Bedford for $36,000. Bedford goes and says, hey, this is free money. It's like Priceline. We had 5 empty seats. So if we get 5 kids from Keene High and they fill those 5 seats, we automatically get $90,000, a minimum $90,000. And chances are, the chances of our school kids leaving and we have to pay is slim. But if we have 10 kids leave, that means we have 10 open spaces. So, like I said, so if 5 kids at 18,000 go from Keene to Bedford, Keene, the taxpayers of Keene have to pay that bill. The taxpayers of Keene will have to come up with $90,000. Okay? So it will be like Keene buying 5 airline tickets, paying for those 5 airline tickets, and when the airplane takes off, it has 5 empty seats. So Keene would have bought $90,000 worth of air. Another thing that will happen, like it happened in California, hey, Keene has this 6'9" basketball player, and he's extremely good. You know what? Maybe I will contact their parents about, hey, you ever think of coming to our school? We've got a better school. We're competing better. Bang up, bang. Hey, you're a great girl soccer player. Yeah, we can use you. Oh, look at that. Oh, Keene produces a really good football player every now and then. Oops. Why would you want to play on an average or mediocre team? Or you can go, hey, Monadnock, you really have good football teams and you have really good baseball teams. Maybe we can come up with a way that you can come to our school. And don't worry, you're not paying for anything. We can work out different ways to help you. So if we sit down and say we're having 1,400 kids at the high school, and so, for example, this Saturday we'll have our meeting before we have people go out to vote in March. So we count on 1,400 students. Then the general court passes the bill and the governor signs it. It won't happen until after people vote on their budget going forward. So what will happen is, you voted? Yep. We're funding 1,400 kids at the high school. Monadnock goes in. And the parents at Monadnock go, hey, I work in Keene. Why can't I bring my kid to school with me to Keene with me? So 30 parents show up with their kids and saying, hey, we want to go to Keenheim. 15 parents from Winchester. Different, or we got Fall Mountain or Connick, Conval. Oh, we work in Keene. Say all of a sudden there's 60 extra kids on the doorstep. And under the law, if it passes, we got to take them. But we never planned on having 60 extra kids. Does that 60 extra kids, do they fit in? Or do we have to hire someone new to help us with the kids? Okay. Now, what happens if it goes the other way and it goes, you know what? I don't like Keene's K through 5. I like Chesterfield. I like Marlboro. I like K through 8. I'm looking at that. K through 8 is the results are much better than K through 5. And it goes, So what happens if 35 parents say, you know what? We're not sending our kids to Keene School, elementary school. Oops. But we've already funded for these kids, and what we're going to do, lay off a teacher in the middle of the year? We have contract provisions and stuff. Or, I'm going to go through K through 5 while I'm home. This is really good. But I don't want to send my kids to the middle school. I want to send my kids to a K through 8 school. So I can send my kids to Marlboro, or I can send my kids to Chesterfield, different places. And again, if my kids go to Chesterfield or my kids go to Marlboro, that the taxpayers of Keene have to pay for the children going to Marlboro or going to Chesterfield or another K through 8 community. Again, there's people in Keene that work in Manchester or Nashua, around those, and they go, yep, these are the schools I want my kids to go to because it's convenient for me and it's not really out of my way. So what will happen is there will be no year-to-year planning. It will be a real guess. Keene, when we do the budget, we count on so much tuition. We get tuition for kids from Surrey to go to Wheelock School. We get tuition for kids to go to 6, 7, and 8 at the middle school. Some go all 3, some go 1, some go 2. Then we get tuition for kids to go to the high school. Okay? And one of the things that we have with the AREA agreement, which is basically a 20-year agreement, so with all the sending schools. So in that 20-year agreement, we go to the schools and say, this is the funding formula. Whatever it costs to send our child to the middle school, the high school, elementary school, that's what we will charge you. Plus, it's like a 2.5% fee, which covers basically replacement costs. and upgrades for the building. So all the towns know what to do. So when they do their budgets, it's all planned out. But the big thing is, okay, if you are part of the AREA agreement, is all your kids have to come to Keene. You can't go and say, well, you know what? I think I'm only going to send 80% of my kids to school. No. If you're Chesterfield and with when you get ninth grade, you're expected to send all your children here. You can't say, oh, we're going to cut a deal and send 20 of them to Brattleboro High. Nope. The only kids who are not allowed to come here is ones that go to private schools, or two, they go to public charter schools, or otherwise they come here. So basically we can plan on how much tuition, how many people to hire, what we're going to do. Okay? That was one of the problems with Winchester. We weren't kicking Winchester out of Keene High. Winchester wanted to send some of their kids here and some of their kids to the other school. We could not project what would be going forward. And so maybe some years we overbill the taxpayers and other years we underbill the tax. So that is the major agreement. It's all or none. All your public school, non-charter public school kids have to come here. Okay? But now, if we go into open enrollment, we don't know. Okay, for example, St. Joe's or Lady of Mercy Catholic School, they're sucking up more children because the state is giving them grants. So, hey, you know what? We got a $7,000 grant, and I only have to pay a couple of $1,000s more a year, and I get to send my kid. Or, you know, I really have financial hardship. The Lady of Mercy School can say, hey, we got 3 openings, and yes, we would like to get $10,000 for the kid. But you know what? $7,000 for an empty seat helps us out. It's under open enrollment. We have no idea. And it's going to play havoc on the tax system. Okay? The other part is the cream de creme of sports, say the arts, the music. They can be, in a lot of times, because I saw it in California, they will be siphoned off. Because people in other wealthy communities want to look, they want the best for their kids. They want the best football team. They want the best soccer team. They want the best hockey team. They want the best actor or actress for their plays. And the top 20% of the people have the money to do it. If you're just middle class or less, even if you wanted to, you're not going to be able to do it. For example, Little League Baseball used to be kind of cheap, maybe $34, maybe $50 a play, help get your uniform and all that kind of stuff. When my grandkids went on swamp bats, it was $3,000 to just sign on the line. And yes, they were lower income families who wanted their kids to get the opportunity, and they found ways to sacrifice to come up with the $3,000. But as you move up, it got more and more expensive. So open enrollment is not a way to solve the education funding problem we have here in Keene. Open enrollment is a quick gimmick. And if they do open enrollment and then they've got it in saying, hey, you can only increase your budget by 2.5% a year unless it's approved by 65-70% of the voters. What about giving people taxing pay raises? If 85% of our budget is salaries and say we give them a 3% pay raise, oops. So when you figure that out, that's going to be pretty close to 2.5% right there. But oh, wait a minute. Healthcare went up 12%. So that means if we can only go 2.5%, we have to get rid of people. And so if you want to do things, it's got to be sorted out. You just don't do it off the cuff because you only reward a small number of people at government. The government will support them. The government will be using the other 80% plus amount of people, funds that they pay into the tax base to reward this small group. And the thing is, they can go in and, hey, we want to destroy public education. Education sucks. Well, yes, public education has to do a better job. I've been talking to a couple of people, and they told me, I don't want to pay property tax on something that I'm not satisfied with. The people in education have to listen. The people in public education has to improve the quality of their product so people want to stay in public education. And it's going to be a fight. It's a competition. You're selling a product and you want to make sure people believe they're getting their money's worth. If you lose that trust, you are going to suffer a lot of damage. And for the ones who say, hey, let's get rid of public education, you know what? What are you going to do with the 95% of the kids that can't afford to go elite private schools? You got to educate them somewhere. You just can't, because the state law says they have to be in school until they're 18. If you get rid of public education, you don't fund public education, and you pay for a small amount of groups, kids, usually at the higher income, to go to private schools and give them a $7,500 voucher. I don't think you're thinking of the long-term consequences. And in this case, there could be very quickly short-term consequences as schools in a lot of these communities will be forced to shut down. So we should be thinking about it. The Senate and the House should be thinking about it. the governor should be thinking about it. Screw these short-term political, quote, games. What about the long term of our kids? If you can't give our kids a quality education, guess what? They're not staying in New Hampshire. And New Hampshire will become just a state of old white fogies. And once they die off, what happens then? Guess what? The old white fogies who own their houses and did all this stuff, quote unquote, to save on their property tax, will be making up the difference as their property taxes go up. Okay. I have an article here. It's from the magazine Free Equality Inquiry. It's a secularhumanism.org. And yes, they have some religious bent at times, but then they ask some of these questions and they say a lot of things that are pretty provocative and cause you to think. And the title of this is Avoiding a Ghastly Future: The Hard Truths on the State of the Planet. You know, I don't want to hear about climate change. Yes, climate is always changing. Okay? But most people don't know the difference between weather and climate. Okay? Global warming. Explain to me global warming. Okay, again, it's like I was talking about last week. If 95% of the earth is warming up, and I can find a couple of places where it's actually cooling, then I can say, wait a minute, you're talking about global warming. Right down here is part of the globe, and it's getting cooler. Oh, the Antarctic has more ice this year than it did before. Oops. You don't put yourself in stuff like this. Okay. Yes. The weather patterns, which are resulting in causing climate to slowly change, is happening. Okay? So we're talking about this and that, but we're not talking about the planet. What does the future hold for our planet? And it goes off, within the lifetime of anyone born at the start of the baby boom. So from 46 to now. Okay, 46, 54. It'll be 80 years since the first baby of the baby boom was born. In that 80 years, the human population has tripled. And you go, wait a minute. So when the first baby boomer was born, the human population was a little bit more than 2 billion. So it took thousands and thousands, over 5,000, possibly 6,000 years. Okay, if we want to use the creationist individuals, they say the world is 6,000 years old. So in the first 5,920 years, population went from Adam and Eve to 2 billion people. But in the last 80 years, population has gone from 2 billion to 8 billion people. That's some really rapid growth. In the 60s, humans took about 75% of what the planet could regenerate in a year, which means, every year in the 60s, it's like the planet saying, hey, we're going to grow 100 trees, 100 fish, 100 ears of corn. At the end of the year, there was still 25 fish left, 25 ears of corn, and 25 trees, which went to help replenish the following year. So, right now, 56 years later, in 2016, the human population has grown so much that it consumes 170% of what the planet can generate. So if the planet grows 100 trees each year and produces 100 tuna each year, what's happening is we're taking 170 trees and we're taking 170 tunas. So at the end of the year, there is less trees, less tunas, and so the reproduction rate falls off too. Okay. Humans have altered about 70% of the Earth's land surface and ocean. 70%. So you could say only about 30% of the Earth is still virgin, untouched territory. But that's going down quick. Wetlands have lost 85% of their natural area. Wetlands are important for wildlife. Wetlands are important for flood control. It's kind of like, oh, we're looking to build some houses in Keene, and the guy goes, well, we got a wetland right here. The planning board can say, hey, no problem at all. Fill it in. Pay us so much money, and we'll create a wetland someplace else. Okay? Like on 101, Route 9, across some key road by I think it's the Ramada, they created some wetlands right there. Yes, plants are growing. Yes, I can see deer and everything. But they're creating wetlands where wetlands weren't in their first place. Kelp forest, which is really important in the sea, has diminished by 40%. Seagrass meadows are disappearing at 1% a year. The ocean's largest predatory fish are about 2/3 gone. Coral reefs have lost half their living mass. Agriculture has half the weight of living vegetation on ground, driving a diversity loss of 20%. So, hey, we want to keep growing, so we'll just cover up the ground, keep going. And so basically, we have less diversity, we have less butterflies, we left less bees. Oh, bees and butterflies are important in the pollination of the plants. Oops, we're having problem getting these plants to grow because they're not pollinated. And trying to pollinate it by man doesn't work too well. Farm animals and humans now constitute 96% of all land vertebrates. only about 5% wild, free-living animals. The world's wild population of birds, mammals, fish, reptiles, and amphibians have declined nearly 70% in the last 50 years. We got to get more cows. We got to get more cattle. We're just going to keep pushing it out, pushing it out, pushing it out. And guess what? We're growing a lot of this stuff to export, not to feed ourselves. Here's another thing, how we play on numbers. The population, the percentage of people on poverty has gone down. The number of people who are hungry percentages has gone down. But the number of malnourished has declined from 1 billion in 1990 to 800 million in 2017. People saying that's doing really good. I don't think so. Other parts going down is like, oh, no big deal. We have more people and stuff, but what happens when we have more people? We have more people that are homeless, more people that are out of jobs. And it just continues. What did I see this? Yeah, 1 billion. But here's another thing. When the climate changes, guess what happens? People move. People are no different than animals through the course of history. Animals migrate. Look in Africa, the great migrating herds. People migrated. Native Americans, indigenous people migrated. Okay, we in Europe, Western society, we took a lot of agriculture and natural resources away from Asia, Africa, South America. And now Europe and the United States is faced with a problem. Mass migration. If people can't feed themselves, you're going to have mass migration. Look what Europe had, mass migration. Humanity's existing government leaders are not up to what's needed, and mounting stress such as managing climate refugees will proverbially drive politics towards a diminishing capacity to recognize and deal with problems, as it had become stunningly evident. Refugees fleeing climate-related famines or sea level rise in places such as Afghanistan, Somalia, the Philippines, the U.S. Gulf Coast, for example, strain politics and response systems, creating crises that dash the likelihood of diffusing underlying crisis-causing problems. Yes, look at a lot of things that are in Africa, and look at a lot of things that are in South America, and look at it. Oh, yes, we just went back into Venezuela. We took control of the Venezuelan oil, and we're having Venezuelan oil shipped to into America along the Gulf Coast. But the president says a bunch of that money is going to stay with us and some will go back to the Venezuelan people. That's why people migrate, because resources are being stolen. And look at farming. Just as population growth and consumption are not uniform, neither is the misery it creates. An estimate 750 million people are slowly starving, and 1 to 2 billion do not get enough food to fully function as human beings. Population growth causes crowding, joblessness, fiction, and conflict. And leaders, especially Western leaders, refuse to recognize the problem. Most economists and politicians says more growth will solve the problem. More growth will solve the problem. You know, fossil fuels presently enable most consumption. They are the source of 85% of commercial energy. 65% of the fibers and clothes and stuff that we have comes from petroleum. And most plastics are from petroleum. Agriculture depends on fossil fuels. So fossil fuels are not going away. But you know, when I'm looking at it, they said the easiest way to solve a lot of these problems is educating women. As more and more women get educated, go to college, go to work, and have control over their bodies, the ability to decide when to get pregnant, how much to space out their children, it reduces population growth, which will end up preventing additional overcrowding, preventing joblessness, a whole bunch of stuff. So just think, women are used and abused across the world, and the best way to help our planet and to improve the quality of life is to improve the quality of life of women and give them equal rights and give them control over their own body. Oh, pretty simple, pretty cheap, and that's what I want for my daughters and granddaughters.